presented by Soundlibra.com. Explore more titles via the link in the description or at Soundlibra.com. Discover the power of the pause in this new series. Transform your interactions and well-being.
Before we dive in, just a quick heads up that we're exploring mental health and wellness themes today. This is for educational purposes and isn't medical advice, so please consult a professional for your specific needs.
Think about it. How many times have you sent an email you immediately wished you could unsend, or snapped at someone in a moment of frustration, only to feel that pang of regret moments later? These are the impulsive reactions we're talking about, and they can feel almost automatic, like a reflex.
And that's exactly the point, Alex. Our reactions are often automatic. Something happens, we receive an email, hear a comment, face a frustrating situation, and an immediate response springs forth. We don't even realize there's a moment, a tiny, almost invisible gap, where a choice could have been made. This invisible gap is where the power to change our habits lies.
I can certainly relate. Just last week, I was in a team meeting, and a colleague made a suggestion that I instantly felt was, well, not a good idea. My immediate thought was to point out all the flaws. Before I even realized what I was doing, I'd interrupted them and started listing my objections. It totally derailed the conversation, and I could see the look on their face.
And how did that feel afterward?
Awkward, mostly, and a little ashamed. I realized my immediate reaction wasn't helpful at all. It shut down a potentially good idea and made my colleague feel defensive. If I had just taken 1 second, one tiny breath, I could have phrased my concerns more constructively. It's like my brain went from 0 to 60 without any intermediate gears.
That's a perfect description, Alex. That 0 to 60 feeling is often driven by our brain's ancient alarm system, a part of our brain called the amygdala. When the amygdala perceives a threat, and this threat can be anything from a colleague's perceived criticism to a simple misunderstanding, it can trigger what's known as an amygdala hijack.
An amygdala hijack. That sounds pretty dramatic. What exactly happens there?
It is dramatic, in a way, because it bypasses our rational thinking. Think of it as your brain's emergency response system. If you were walking down the street and a car suddenly swerved towards you, your amygdala would instantly trigger a fight, flight, or freeze response. It's designed to protect you from immediate physical danger.
So, it's a survival mechanism.
Exactly. But here's the crucial part. In our modern lives, our amygdala doesn't always distinguish between a genuine physical threat and a perceived social or emotional one. A sharp tone of voice, a critical comment, or even a misinterpreted email can be flagged by the amygdala as a threat. And when it's triggered, it sends out alarm signals, flooding our system with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol.
And that's what makes us react so quickly, without thinking.
Precisely. When the amygdala is on high alert, it essentially takes over. It can shut down the parts of our brain responsible for rational thought, decision-making, and impulse control, primarily the prefrontal cortex. You know that feeling when you're so angry or upset that you can't even think straight. That's your amygdala hijack in action.
So, all those moments when I've blurted out something I shouldn't have, or made a hasty decision, it's because my amygdala was sounding a false alarm?
In many cases, yes. It's not about being a bad person or deliberately intending to cause harm. It's about our biology. Our brains are wired for these rapid, often emotional, responses. The problem arises when these automatic reactions play out in situations that don't require an emergency response, like your team meeting or when you're dealing with colleagues or loved ones.
It's like having an alarm system that's a little too sensitive, going off for a fallen leaf when there's no real danger.
That's a great analogy, Alex. And because these reactions are so immediate, that tiny gap between stimulus and response can feel non-existent. It can feel like the stimulus and the reaction are one and the same. But that's the illusion we're aiming to break. The gap is there. It's usually just incredibly short, measured in milliseconds.
Milliseconds. Wow. So, the goal of mastering the pause is to expand that tiny gap?
That's the core idea. We want to create a conscious space, even if it's just for a brief moment between the trigger and our response. This space allows our prefrontal cortex, the more rational, thinking part of our brain, to come back online and guide our actions. Instead of an automatic, knee-jerk reaction, we can have a considered, thoughtful response.
And what are the consequences of not pausing? You mentioned regret and shutting down conversations.
The consequences can be far-reaching. On a personal level, it can damage relationships. Think about arguments that escalate quickly because both parties are reacting emotionally. In the workplace, impulsive reactions can lead to misunderstandings, decreased productivity, and a negative team environment. It can also lead to missed opportunities because we react so quickly we don't fully consider the potential benefits of a situation.
And it erodes trust, doesn't it? If people know you tend to react sharply, they might become hesitant to share ideas or concerns with you.
Absolutely. Trust is built on reliability and thoughtful interaction. Consistently reacting impulsively can make you seem unpredictable and, frankly, unsafe to be around from a communication perspective. It can lead to a feeling of constantly being on the defensive, either for yourself or for others.
So, this first episode is about recognizing that this gap exists and that our immediate reactions are often driven by this biological amygdala hijack mechanism. It's about becoming aware of that split-second moment where choice is actually possible, even if it feels instantaneous.
Exactly. The first step to changing any habit is awareness. We need to start noticing when we're about to react impulsively. It's not about judging yourself for these reactions, but simply observing them. Think of yourself as a scientist studying your own behavior. What happens just before you feel that surge of emotion? What's the trigger?
And then the series will teach us how to expand that gap, right? How to actually create that pause.
That's the plan. We'll explore practical techniques, starting with simple tools you can use immediately to begin cultivating this pause. We'll look at how to calm that alarm system when it goes off, engage your rational thinking, and ultimately, how to respond in a way that aligns with your intentions.
It sounds like such a fundamental skill, yet so often overlooked. We're taught to respond, to be quick, to have an answer. The idea of intentionally not responding immediately feels almost countercultural.
It can, but the rewards are immense. Imagine navigating challenging conversations with more clarity, resolving conflicts more effectively, and simply feeling more in control of your emotional responses. That's the promise of mastering the pause. It's about shifting from being a passenger in your reactions to being the driver of your responses.
So, for our listeners today, the key takeaway is to start noticing. Notice those moments when you feel that hot surge of emotion, that urge to speak or act instantly. Recognize that there is a minuscule space there, and that's where our work begins.
That's the perfect summary, Alex. Awareness is the foundation. We've identified the problem, the automatic nature of our reactions, often fueled by an amygdala hijack and the overlooked, yet critical, gap between stimulus and response. We've seen how not pausing can lead to regret and damaged relationships. The awareness of this gap is the first, and perhaps most important, step towards mastering the pause.
So we've set the stage. We know why we react so quickly, and we know that there's indeed a tiny window of opportunity to choose our response.
Exactly. And in our next episode, we'll delve deeper into the science behind these reactions by exploring the amygdala hijack in more detail and understanding how it impacts our behavior. Thanks for listening. Next episode, Episode 2, The Brain's Alarm System, Understanding Amygdala Hijacks.
Welcome back. Last time, we explored how our brains can get hijacked, leading us to react without thinking. Now, Let's tackle your first practical tool for creating that vital space between a trigger and your response, the 7-second rule.
The 7-second rule. It sounds so simple, almost too simple. But I'm already starting to see how powerful a deliberate pause can be. Last episode, we talked about that amygdala hijack, that feeling of being overwhelmed by emotion. It often happens so fast, right? One moment you're fine, the next you feel like you're exploding.
Exactly, Lisa. And that explosive moment is precisely what the 7-second rule is designed to intercept. Think of it as a tiny but mighty bridge. On one side is the impulsive, emotional reaction, the amygdala shouting commands. On the other side is the thoughtful, rational response, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and decision making. Usually, the amygdala is so loud and fast, it bypasses the prefrontal cortex entirely.
So, this 7-second window is about giving the prefrontal cortex a chance to chime in before the amygdala completely takes over?
Precisely. It's about creating a small gap, a moment of conscious delay to allow that crucial connection to happen. 7 seconds might feel like a long time when you're experiencing a strong emotion, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a very manageable amount of time to reclaim your power. It's our very first step in learning to think before we react.
Let's break down why 7 seconds. Why not 3 or 10?
That's a great question. Research suggests that 7 seconds, roughly, is enough time for a new thought to form and our conscious mind to process a situation a little more objectively. It's long enough to disrupt the automatic, knee-jerk reaction and short enough that it doesn't feel like an overwhelming, insurmountable task. After a trigger, there's a moment where the initial emotional surge starts. That surge lasts a few seconds. If you can hold out for roughly 7, the intensity of that initial wave often begins to subside, giving your rational brain a better chance to get a word in.
Okay, I can picture that. It's like the first big, overwhelming wave of emotion hits, and you just kind of let it wash over you for a bit, and then it starts to recede, giving you space to see what's left on the shore.
That's a perfect analogy, Lisa. So, how do we actually do this? The simplest way to practice this is by counting. Seriously, just count to 7 in your head. You can even say it silently to yourself. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, all the way to 7. It sounds almost comically simple, but it's incredibly effective as a starting point.
When you say count to 7, what are we doing while we're counting? Are we just standing there, frozen?
Good point. You're not frozen. You're actively creating space. While you're counting, you can take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. This does two things. It physically calms your nervous system by activating the part of your nervous system that promotes relaxation, and it gives your mind something else to focus on besides the overwhelming emotion. So, the counting is the structure, and the breath is the physical anchor.
I like that. So, the counting provides the framework, and the breath provides the calm. Let's try it with a common, everyday annoyance. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. That jolt of anger, the urge to honk or yell. How would the 7-second rule work there?
Okay, so someone cuts you off. Your immediate thought might be, how dare they? Or other strong, negative judgments. Your heart rate probably just spiked. Instead of immediately slamming on the brakes or laying on the horn, you recognize that feeling. You say to yourself, okay, 7-second rule. And you start counting silently. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. While you count, you take a slow breath. Breathe in, breathe out. The physical act of counting and breathing interrupts the automatic response chain.
And during those 7 seconds of counting and breathing, what's happening in my brain?
While you're doing that, your prefrontal cortex is getting a chance to catch up. It might start thinking, okay, they cut me off. Was it intentional? Or did they just make a mistake? Are they driving erratically? Is it worth getting worked up about when I'm trying to get somewhere? Instead of just reacting with anger, you're opening the door for a more rational assessment. The immediate urge to lash out might still be there, but it's not immediately acted upon.
So after those 7 seconds, I've already gained a little perspective. I might still be annoyed, but I'm less likely to retaliate in a way that could escalate the situation. I might just relax my grip on the steering wheel and let it go.
Exactly. And that's a huge win. You've prevented a potential road rage incident, or at least a massive surge of stress for yourself, with just a simple 7-second pause. It's about choosing your response rather than being controlled by your reaction.
Let's take another scenario. Imagine you're at work and a colleague sends an email with a slightly critical tone about something you've done. That feeling of defensiveness can kick in so fast.
Absolutely. That email lands, and you read the words, and your internal alarm bells start ringing. You feel attacked, misunderstood, or unfairly criticized. Before you even think about drafting a fiery reply, you employ the 7-second rule. Okay, 7-second rule, you tell yourself. You take a slow breath. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, up to 7.
And while I'm doing that, the initial emotional sting starts to fade. My brain, given those 7 seconds, might start thinking, let me reread that email. What exactly is the issue here? Is it really a personal attack or a request for clarification? What's the best way to respond professionally?
Precisely. You're shifting from they're attacking me to how can I best address this feedback or concern. This pause allows you to consider the colleague's perspective, the project's goals, and the impact of your own words. You can then craft a response that is calm, professional, and addresses the actual issue, rather than just reacting to the emotional heat of the moment. You might realize the tone wasn't even negative, just direct.
It's amazing how much more constructive a response can be when it's not fueled by initial defensiveness. So, the 7 second rule is our foundational tool for creating space. It's about consciously inserting a deliberate delay.
Yes, it is. And like any new skill, it takes practice. You won't be perfect at it immediately. There will be times when you forget, or when the emotion is so strong that 7 seconds feels impossible. That's perfectly okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. The more you practice this simple act of counting and breathing, the more you train your brain to create that space automatically.
So, the key is to start practicing this even in low stakes situations. Maybe when you're waiting for a red light to turn green, or when you feel a flicker of annoyance at something minor.
Exactly. Make a little game for yourself. When you notice a slight irritation, practice the 7-second rule. Notice the feeling, count to 7, take a breath. You're building a mental muscle. Over time, this conscious pause will become more automatic. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, you wobble and need to concentrate very hard. But with practice, it becomes a natural, effortless movement.
And what happens when we do manage to successfully use the 7 second rule? What's the benefit we're building towards?
The benefit is regaining control. It's about shifting from being a passenger in your emotional car, letting your reactions drive, to being the driver, in charge of where you're going. By creating this space, you give yourself the opportunity to choose a more helpful, constructive, and aligned response. You start to move from a reactive mode to a more intentional mode.
So, to recap, the 7 second rule is our first practical technique for creating space between a trigger and our response. It involves consciously counting to 7, often while taking a slow breath, to allow our rational prefrontal cortex to engage and override an immediate emotional reaction. We use it by breaking the automatic response chain, giving us a moment to assess and choose a more thoughtful course of action.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. This simple, yet powerful, technique is the foundation for so many other skills we'll be discussing. It's about building the habit of a pause, even when it feels difficult. Remember, it's about progress, not perfection. Start practicing it today in those small moments, and you'll begin to feel the difference.
I'm already feeling more empowered just knowing there's a concrete step I can take. I'm going to be actively looking for opportunities to practice counting to 7.
That's fantastic to hear. And in our next episode, we'll build on this foundation by exploring how to use our inner dialogue, self-talk, to further calm that internal storm and support our pause. Next episode, de-escalation self-talk, calming the inner storm. Welcome back to Think Before You React, Mastering the Pause. Last time, we explored the 7-second rule, that crucial window of opportunity to create space between a stimulus and our response. Today, we're diving deep into a powerful tool that fits perfectly within that space: de-escalation self-talk.
That's right, Alex. We all have that inner voice, and sometimes, especially when we're feeling stressed or threatened, it can start to spiral into negativity. De-escalation self-talk is all about consciously shifting that inner dialogue to calm the storm before it gets out of hand. It's like having a personal coach in your head, guiding you back to a more centered place.
Exactly. Think of it as internal reframing. We experience an event, our brain processes it, and then our self-talk kicks in. If that self-talk is, "I can't believe they said that. I'm so angry," it only fuels the fire. But if we can introduce phrases like, "Okay, that was unexpected. Let me take a breath," we start to de-escalate the situation internally.
So, what are some of these powerful phrases we can use? It sounds simple, but in the heat of the moment, remembering what to say can be a challenge.
It can, and that's precisely why we need to practice them. Let's start with acknowledging what's happening without judgment. Simple statements like, "I'm feeling a strong emotion right now," or "This situation is challenging." The key here is that you're not saying you're bad for feeling it. You're simply observing it. It's like putting a label on the emotion.
So, instead of, "This is terrible, I'm going to blow up," it's more like, "Okay, I'm noticing a lot of frustration building up." That feels very different.
Precisely. And then we can move into phrases that create that mental distance. Remember our 7-second rule? Self-talk fits right in there. You can tell yourself, "I have time to think," or "This is not an emergency. I can process this." It reinforces that you have control, even if it doesn't feel like it.
I like, "This is not an emergency." So often, when we're emotionally triggered, our brains convince us that the world is ending, or our job is in jeopardy, or our relationship is over. Reminding ourselves that it's not actually a life or death situation can be incredibly grounding.
Absolutely. And it opens the door for more constructive self-talk. Phrases like, "What is the most helpful thing I can do right now?" Or "What is my goal in this situation?" This shifts your focus from the emotional reaction to a more problem-solving mindset, which is precisely what our prefrontal cortex excels at. But it needs a little nudge when the amygdala is firing.
That's a great connection back to what we've discussed. So, we acknowledge the emotion, create distance, and then we start thinking about our objective. For instance, if someone is criticizing your work, instead of thinking, "They're just trying to make me look bad," you might say, "My goal here is to understand feedback and improve. I can ask clarifying questions."
Exactly, Lisa. And here's another category of self-talk that's incredibly powerful: validating your own needs and boundaries. You can tell yourself, "It's okay to feel this way," or "I have a right to be treated with respect." This isn't about being defensive. It's about internal self-validation. It's crucial for building confidence.
That's so important, Alex. So often, especially in challenging interactions, we feel like we have to push our own feelings aside to manage the other person. But hearing yourself say, "It's okay to feel upset by that," can be incredibly freeing. It acknowledges your internal experience.
It does. And it allows you to then consider your next steps from a place of self-respect, rather than trying to appease or react out of fear. Another practical set of phrases involves focusing on your breathing and physical state. Even if you don't have time for a full breath, you can tell yourself, "Breathe," or "Relax your shoulders."
I can picture myself doing this. Just a little internal cue. Shoulders relax. It's amazing how much tension we hold without even realizing it, and how that tension amplifies our distress.
It's a physical manifestation of our emotional state. So, let's recap the types of de-escalation self-talk we've discussed. First, observation and acknowledgement. "I am feeling X right now." Second, creating distance. "I have time to think," or "This is not an emergency." Third, focusing on goals and helpful actions. "What can I do next?" or "What is my objective?" Fourth, self-validation and boundaries. "It's okay to feel this," or I deserve respect. And fifth, physical grounding, breathe or relax.
That gives us a really solid framework. To really make these effective, though, we need practice. How can listeners integrate these into their lives, especially when they're not in the middle of a heated moment?
Excellent question. The best way is through preparation and repetition. Before you even anticipate a challenging situation, practice these phrases. Say them out loud, write them down, and even role-play scenarios in your head. Imagine a difficult conversation and then run through how you would use these self-talk tools.
So, like a mental rehearsal, I can see how that would build the mental pathways, making it easier to access them when you're actually experiencing the stress.
Precisely. And when you do find yourself in a challenging situation, even if you don't use the perfect phrase, just the attempt to use self-talk is a win. Don't berate yourself if it doesn't work perfectly the first or even the 10th time. Remember, this is a skill, and like any skill, it improves with practice and patience.
That's a crucial reminder. Perfection isn't the goal, progress is. Let's try an example. Imagine I'm in a work meeting and a colleague interrupts me repeatedly, making me feel unheard and frustrated. What would my self-talk sound like?
Okay, picture this. The colleague interrupts. Your first instinct might be anger, but then you catch it. You might think, whoa, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. That was interruptive. That's your observation. Then you create distance. This meeting will continue. I have a chance to speak later, or I can address this calmly. Then you focus on your goal. My goal is to share my idea effectively. I need to regain the floor without escalating this. Then, self-validation. It's understandable that I'm feeling this way. It's not acceptable to be interrupted constantly. And finally, grounding deep breath.
And from that calmer internal state, I could then choose to say something like, "Excuse me, Alex, I'd like to finish my thought." Or perhaps wait for a pause and then say, "I had a point I wanted to make about that." The self-talk allows me to choose how I respond, rather than just reacting.
You've got it. It gives you agency. It's the difference between being a passenger on an emotional roller coaster and being the driver. And it's not just for interpersonal conflicts. This self-talk is valuable when you're facing personal challenges too. If you're feeling overwhelmed by a task, you can tell yourself, this feels big, but I can break it down into smaller steps. What's the very first step I can take?
That's a fantastic application. It's about managing our internal state so it doesn't sabotage our ability to act. What about those moments when the negative self-talk feels really ingrained, almost like a habit?
That's where consistency is key. We need to consciously challenge those negative thought patterns. If your inner voice says, I always mess this up, you counter it with, that's not true. I've succeeded at other things, and I can learn from this. It's about replacing the old, unhelpful narrative with a new, constructive one. It takes time, effort, and a lot of internal repetition.
So, it's like planting new seeds in your mind and nurturing them until they grow stronger than the weeds.
A perfect analogy, Lisa. And with these seeds of positive and de-escalating self-talk, you start to build your emotional resilience. You become better equipped to handle setbacks, criticism, and difficult emotions without letting them define your actions or your well-being.
This is so powerful, Alex. It's not about suppressing emotions, but about managing our internal reaction to them so we can respond more thoughtfully. The self-talk acts as an emotional shock absorber.
Exactly. And it's a skill that can be learned and honed. By consciously choosing our words to ourselves, we can transform our internal landscape and, consequently, our external interactions. Remember the core principles. Acknowledge, create distance, focus on goals, validate yourself, and ground yourself. Practice these phrases, and you'll find yourself responding with more calm and clarity.
So, to sum up, de-escalation self-talk is our internal toolkit. It's the conscious dialogue we have with ourselves to calm down when we're emotionally triggered. We've learned to start by observing our feelings without judgment, then creating mental space by reminding ourselves that it's not an emergency. We then shift our focus to what we want to achieve and what helpful actions we can take. Crucially, we validate our own feelings and needs, and we use physical cues to ground ourselves. Practicing these phrases regularly helps them become more accessible when we really need them, allowing us to react less and respond more thoughtfully.
Well said, Lisa. These internal conversations are the foundation for navigating difficult moments with grace and effectiveness. They empower us to stay in control of our reactions, even when external circumstances are chaotic.
This has been incredibly practical, Alex. I feel much more equipped to start building my own internal de-escalation strategy.
That's the spirit. Next episode, we'll be exploring how to engage your prefrontal cortex, that amazing architect of thought, to help you craft even more thoughtful and considered responses.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to Think Before You React. Last time, we explored self-talk for calming intense emotional storms. Now, we're focusing on the command center of our brain, the prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex, or PFC, it sounds like this is the part of our brain responsible for all that executive functioning, Alex. The part that helps us pause and consider.
Exactly, Lisa. Think of your brain as a busy city. You have the buzzing, immediate, reactive parts. Those are like the emergency services, always ready to respond quickly. Then you have the elegant, planned, thoughtful parts. That's your city planning department, your architects, your libraries. The prefrontal cortex, or PFC, is the chief architect and city planner of that brain city. It's located right behind your forehead, and it's literally our higher order thinking brain.
The chief architect. I like that. So, what makes this chief architect so special?
This part of your brain is responsible for so many critical functions. It's involved in planning, decision-making, problem-solving, impulse control, and even our social behavior. It allows us to consider consequences, to weigh options, and to choose a course of action that's not just immediate, but also beneficial in the long run. It's what separates our thoughtful responses from our knee-jerk reactions.
So, when we're in an emotional hijack like we discussed, the emergency services are on high alert and the chief architect is out to lunch?
That's a perfect way to put it. When your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, gets triggered, it can essentially shut down the PFC. It's like a blackout in the city planning department. The PFC is offline, and the emergency services, our primal, reactive instincts, take over. This is why we say things we later regret or act in ways we can't explain. Our rational, thoughtful brain isn't in charge.
That makes so much sense. We've talked about the 7-second rule and self-talk. Are these methods ways to even get the architect back online when the emergency services are screaming?
Absolutely. That 7-second pause, for instance, is like a brief moment to blink the lights back on in the planner's office. It creates a sliver of opportunity for the PFC to re-engage. And calming self-talk? That's like sending a message to the emergency services saying, "Okay, calm down, we're handling this." The planners are back on duty.
So, the goal isn't to eliminate the emergency services entirely, but to have the architect in charge most of the time and the emergency services only acting when genuinely necessary?
Precisely. You don't want to get rid of your amygdala. It's a vital survival mechanism. But you do want your PFC to be the conductor of the orchestra, not just a panicked musician. We want to strengthen the PFC's ability to respond, even when the amygdala sounds the alarm.
How can we actively engage this PFC more, especially when we feel that emotional surge starting?
One of the most powerful ways is through mindfulness. Remember how we've touched on being present? Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. When you practice mindfulness, you are intentionally directing your attention. Where does that attention go? It's going to your PFC. You're telling your brain, focus here. Observe this.
So, if I'm feeling angry and I consciously choose to focus on the feeling of my feet on the floor or the rhythm of my breath, I'm actually activating my PFC?
You are. You're shifting your brain's focus from the automatic, emotional response to a more deliberate, observed experience. It's like switching from a reactive broadcast to an engaged, analytical channel. This conscious redirection of attention strengthens the neural pathways to your PFC. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes to access this powerful part of your brain.
It's like training a muscle. Then, the more you use your PFC for deliberate attention, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. Think of it this way. Your brain is constantly adapting based on how you use it. This is called neuroplasticity. By consistently engaging your PFC through mindfulness, deliberate focus, and conscious thought, you're literally rewiring your brain to make that executive function more accessible and robust.
That's fascinating. So, beyond mindfulness, what are some other ways to consciously engage the PFC?
Another key strategy is deliberate focus. This means intentionally concentrating on a specific task or thought, even when distractions are present. When you're in a heated conversation, for example, and you feel yourself getting defensive, you can consciously choose to focus on the message the other person is actually trying to convey rather than getting swept up in your rising emotion. This requires sustained attention, a core PFC function.
So, instead of thinking, they're attacking me, you try to think, what is the core concern they're expressing beneath the frustration?
Precisely. You're shifting from your emotional interpretation to a more analytical understanding. This involves your PFC actively processing information, considering context, and inhibiting that immediate emotional defense. It's about engaging your thinking brain rather than your feeling brain.
And this engagement can be practiced even when we're not in a high stress situation.
Absolutely. The more you practice these skills in low-stakes environments, the more readily available they will be when you need them most. Think about learning a new skill, like playing an instrument or a sport. Initially, it requires immense concentration and conscious effort. You're deliberately engaging your PFC over time. With practice, those actions become more automatic, more fluid. The PFC recedes slightly into the background, but it's still there, overseeing.
So, we're looking to build a repertoire of deliberate actions that pull our PFC into the driver's seat.
That's right. Another important aspect is breaking down complex problems. When faced with a challenging situation, our PFC is crucial for dissecting it into manageable parts. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the whole messy situation, we can consciously decide to focus on one piece at a time. This is a higher level cognitive skill that the PFC allows us to perform.
That's another great analogy. Feeling overwhelmed is like trying to eat an entire cake in one bite. Breaking it down is like enjoying slices.
Exactly. And speaking of bites, let's connect this to what we discussed earlier. Remember the 7-second rule? That initial pause gives your PFC a chance to survey the situation. Then, if you can engage in calming self-talk, you're essentially giving your PFC more data to work with, helping it to analyze without the immediate amygdala shutdown. Now, with deliberate focus and problem solving, we're actively using that re-engaged PFC.
It's like building blocks. The pause creates the foundation, self talk clears the air, and then conscious engagement like focus and problem solving allows the PFC to do its best work.
You've got it. Now, what about under extreme pressure? When the amygdala is screaming at full volume and the PFC feels completely inaccessible. This is where intention setting becomes vital, which we'll explore more later in the series. But for now, even consciously setting an intention before a potentially difficult interaction can prime your PFC, for example. Before a meeting, you might tell yourself, my intention is to listen more than I speak and to respond thoughtfully. This preloads your PFC with a desired behavior.
So, even before the trigger happens, you can create a mental blueprint for your PFC to refer to.
Precisely. It's about proactively preparing your brain for thoughtful engagement. It's about telling your PFC, here's what we're aiming for. This can significantly influence how you respond when faced with a challenge. It's about shifting from a reactive mode to a proactive, intentional mode.
This feels like it's about actively recruiting our higher thinking brain, not just waiting for it to show up, but inviting it, training it, and then relying on it.
That's a fantastic summary, Lisa. It's about building that capacity. We're not just hoping our PFC will be online, we're actively creating the conditions for it to be effective. Remember, the PFC is our architect, our planner, our decision maker. By practicing mindfulness, deliberate focus, breaking down problems, and setting intentions, we are strengthening its ability to guide our actions, to temper our reactions, and to ensure we respond thoughtfully, even when our emotional alarm system is blaring.
So, to recap what we've learned today, the prefrontal cortex, our brain's chief architect, is responsible for planning, decision making, and impulse control. When our amygdala is triggered, the PFC can go offline, leading to knee jerk reactions. But we can actively engage and strengthen our PFC through practices like mindfulness by deliberately focusing our attention.
And through deliberate focus on tasks, breaking down complex problems into smaller parts, and even by setting intentions before challenging situations. These strategies help us recruit our thinking brain when we need it most.
It's about making that thoughtful response our natural default rather than a last-ditch effort.
Exactly. And this ability to engage our PFC is foundational for all the communication skills we'll be exploring next. Understanding how to manage our internal state allows us to better manage external interactions.
It really is about mastering ourselves from the inside out.
Indeed. Next episode, we'll begin to explore how these internal skills translate to external communication as we discuss mindful listening. Understanding how to truly hear others is a powerful tool for de-escalation and connection.
Mindful listening, I'm looking forward to that. Next episode, mindful listening, hearing beyond the words. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to Think Before You React. Today, we're tackling a crucial skill for building understanding, mindful listening.
Mindful listening. It sounds simple, but in our busy world, it's incredibly challenging. Last time, Alex, we talked about creating space. Mindful listening feels like the perfect way to use that space.
Exactly. How often are you in a conversation, already planning your reply, or thinking about something else entirely?
Oh, I've been there. You hear the words, but you're not processing them. It's like they go in one ear and out the other.
That's where mindful listening helps. It's being fully present, paying attention to words, nonverbal cues, and striving to understand the speaker's perspective without judgment. It's absorbing, not just waiting to talk.
So, it's an active process. What does that practically look like, Alex? How can someone start?
Focus on the present moment. Keep your attention on the speaker. Notice when your mind wanders and gently bring it back. It's like meditation, but for conversations.
If our minds wander, we're not hearing them. What are some specific techniques to stay present?
A powerful technique is attentive silence. This means consciously resisting the urge to interrupt. Remember, early on we discussed the impulse to react. Attentive silence is about holding back that impulse to let the speaker fully express themselves.
Attentive silence. I like that. It emphasizes the active choice. It's chosen quiet for understanding.
Precisely. Another technique is non-judgmental observation. Listen without immediately labeling what they say as right or wrong. Try to understand their experience and point of view.
That's tough. Our brains love to categorize. How do we practice just observing?
Notice your own judgments as they arise. You might think, that's a silly idea. The mindful part is to acknowledge that thought, there's a judgment, and let it go, turning your attention back to understanding. It's like watching clouds drift by.
So, it's awareness of our inner commentary without letting it derail our listening. This can significantly de-escalate conflicts, right? If someone feels truly heard, they're less defensive.
Absolutely. When people feel understood, they feel safer and more willing to communicate. This reduces defensiveness and makes finding common ground easier. It's a tool for conflict prevention.
Besides attentive silence and non-judgmental observation, how else can we show we're listening mindfully?
Through reflective listening or paraphrasing, summarize what you've heard in your own words. You might say, "So, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're feeling frustrated because X happened, and you were hoping for Y."
That's a fantastic technique. It confirms you've been paying attention and allows them to clarify if you've misunderstood. It creates a feedback loop for understanding.
Exactly. It's demonstrating that you've processed the information and are trying to grasp their meaning. Another aspect is paying attention to nonverbal cues. Body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice are key.
The unspoken messages, not just the words, but how they're delivered. If someone says, "I'm fine" with slumped shoulders, their nonverbals tell a different story.
Precisely. Mindful listening integrates these cues. You're listening to the words, observing the body language, and sensing the emotional tone. This holistic approach gives a richer understanding.
This sounds like it requires focus. We discussed how the amygdala hijack makes us reactive. By focusing on mindful listening, are we also strengthening our ability to bypass those hijackings?
You're absolutely spot on, Lisa. Mindful listening is a powerful antidote to amygdala hijacks. When you're actively engaged in understanding someone else, your focus shifts away from your own internal alarm signals. You're less likely to perceive their words as a threat, and therefore, less likely to trigger your own fight or flight response.
So, by actively focusing on the other person, we're actually calming our own internal system. It's a fascinating feedback loop. It's not just about being a better listener, it's about managing our own emotional reactivity.
It is, and it reinforces the idea that our automatic reactions often stem from incomplete information or misinterpretations. When we take the time to truly listen, we often find that the perceived threat or problem wasn't as significant as our initial unmindful reaction suggested.
Can you give us an example of how mindful listening could play out in a common scenario, maybe a disagreement with a family member or a colleague?
Let's imagine a situation where a colleague, Sarah, is upset with you because she feels you didn't share information with her in a timely manner, causing her extra work. Your immediate reaction might be defensiveness. "Well, I was busy," or "It's not my fault you didn't ask."
That's the reactive response we've been talking about. So, how would mindful listening change that?
Instead of jumping to defend yourself, you would pause. You'd notice your own urge to explain or justify. Then, you'd focus on Sarah. You'd listen to her words. She feels left out. She feels burdened. You'd observe her body language. Perhaps she's looking down or her arms are crossed. You might even pick up on a tone of frustration or disappointment in her voice.
So, you're taking it all in, trying to understand her experience.
Yes. Then, you might use reflective listening. You could say, "Sarah, I hear that you're feeling frustrated because I didn't share that information with you sooner, and it created extra work for you. Is that right?"
And Sarah would likely say yes, and maybe even elaborate a bit more, feeling heard.
Exactly. And her explanation might include details you weren't aware of. Then, perhaps, you can respond more empathetically. You might say, "I'm sorry I caused you extra work. I realize now how important it was for you to have that information earlier. I was also dealing with some other urgent tasks, but that's no excuse for not communicating with you. How can we ensure this doesn't happen again?"
That's such a different outcome from the initial reactive response. It moves from accusation and defense to collaboration and problem solving. That's the power of stepping back and truly listening.
It transforms the entire dynamic. And it's not just about conflict. Mindful listening enhances all our relationships. It shows respect, builds trust, and fosters deeper connections. When people know they will be truly heard, they are more willing to be vulnerable and open.
It's like giving the other person the gift of your full attention. And in return, you gain a much clearer understanding of their world, their needs, and their perspective.
A helpful analogy for mindful listening is like being a detective. A good detective doesn't jump to conclusions. They gather all the evidence, they consider different angles, they listen to all the witnesses, and they piece together the whole story before forming an opinion. Mindful listening applies that same meticulous, curious, and open approach to our conversations.
That's a great analogy. So, to recap, mindful listening involves being present in the moment, practicing non-judgmental observation, and actively demonstrating understanding through techniques like attentive silence, paraphrasing, and observing nonverbal cues.
And we've seen how this skill is not only about becoming a better communicator, but also about managing our own emotional reactivity and preventing those impulsive amygdala hijacks. By shifting our focus outwards and truly seeking to understand, we create a more peaceful internal environment.
It's a practice, isn't it? It's not something we master overnight. It requires conscious effort and repeated practice.
Absolutely. Like any skill, the more you practice mindful listening, the more natural it becomes. Start with small interactions, perhaps with a friend or family member, and gradually apply it to more challenging conversations. Notice what happens when you truly focus on hearing, rather than just waiting to speak.
The reward is immense: deeper connections, fewer misunderstandings, and a greater sense of inner calm, even in the midst of difficult conversations.
And that calm, that ability to truly hear and understand, sets the stage perfectly for our next topic: assertive, not aggressive communication. We'll learn how to express our own needs and thoughts clearly and respectfully, building on the foundation of mindful listening we've established today.
It's all about creating those considered responses.
Indeed, it is. Thanks for joining us today on Think Before You React. We'll pick up with assertive communication in our next episode. Thanks for listening. Understand assertive communication. Express needs clearly, without aggression or passivity.
That's a crucial skill, Alex. So many people struggle with finding that middle ground between being too forceful and too timid. Can you define assertive communication for our listeners?
Assertive communication is expressing your needs, thoughts, and feelings directly and honestly, while respecting others. It's not about winning arguments or getting your way. That's aggressive. And it's not about avoiding conflict or bottling up emotions. That's passive. Assertive is about finding that balance where you're clear, confident, and respectful.
So it's like a balance beam. Too much force and you fall to the aggressive side. Too little and you fall to the passive side. How do we know when we're actually being assertive rather than aggressive or passive?
Let's break down their characteristics. Aggressive communication often includes blaming, demanding, interrupting, and using use statements that put others on the defensive. Think, "You always interrupt me," or "You need to fix this now." It's loud, confrontational, and leaves others feeling attacked.
That.
Welcome back. Last time we explored assertive communication. Today, identifying your triggers is the first step to prevention.
If we don't know what sets us off, we'll always be reacting. So, Alex, what is an emotional trigger and why is identifying them so important?
An emotional trigger is anything that sparks an intense, often negative, emotional response. It's like a spark igniting a reaction before we can think. Understanding these triggers gives us the power to disarm them.
So, it's a warning system. If we know a certain comment might make us defensive, we can be prepared. But how do we identify these personal triggers? It sounds introspective.
It requires honesty and a willingness to look inward. Self-reflection through journaling is a powerful tool. I suggest a series of prompts to help listeners dig deep.
Journaling prompts. What kind of questions should someone ask?
Start by thinking about moments when you reacted impulsively, when you later regretted something. A prompt could be, describe a recent situation where you felt an intense emotional reaction. What happened immediately before you felt that way?
Pinpointing the event. And the next layer?
Next, identify the emotion itself. Was it anger, frustration, hurt, insecurity? The prompt. What specific emotion did you feel most strongly? Try to be precise. Was it anger or resentment or irritation?
Labeling the emotion is important. We often just say mad, but feelings have nuances.
Exactly. Then, explore the accompanying thoughts. Our triggers are often linked to underlying beliefs. A prompt. What thoughts were running through your mind? What did you tell yourself?
The inner dialogue fuels our reactions.
You've hit the nail on the head. This leads to the core. Are there recurring themes? Does criticism or being interrupted consistently set you off? Prompt. Are there recurring patterns? What specific words, actions, or situations tend to cause this strong emotional response?
So, we look for common threads. A certain type of feedback or being overlooked.
Precisely. To understand a root, ask why. Triggers can stem from past experiences or unmet needs. Prompt. What might this situation remind you of from your past? Is there a deeper meaning or unmet need associated with this trigger?
This is where we uncover something older, maybe from childhood.
Indeed, it's okay if this feels difficult. The goal is understanding, not judgment. Another insightful prompt. What assumptions or beliefs do you hold about yourself or others that are activated by this trigger?
For example, if criticism triggers a belief that you're not good enough or must be perfect.
That's perfect. Once you've identified a trigger and underlying beliefs, consider your usual reaction. Prompt. How do you typically behave when this trigger is activated? What is your usual coping mechanism?
Is it lashing out, withdrawing, overthinking?
Exactly. And to change the pattern, what would a more constructive or calm response look like in this situation? This isn't about suppressing emotion, but choosing a helpful way to express it.
So, to recap those journaling prompts. First, describe a recent intense emotional situation and what happened right before. Second, pinpoint the specific emotion you felt. Third, identify the thoughts that were present. Fourth, look for recurring patterns. Fifth, explore past connections or unmet needs. Sixth, consider activated assumptions or beliefs. Seventh, describe your typical reaction. And finally, imagine a more constructive response.
That's an excellent summary. Lisa, it's a structured way to approach introspective work. And remember that identifying triggers is an ongoing process.
It's not about eliminating all emotions, but managing their intensity and expression.
Absolutely. We want to move from automatic reactions to conscious responses. Think of it like creating a personal trigger map. You see where the potential landmines are.
A trigger map. I like that. It suggests we can navigate them more safely.
Precisely. Once you have this map, you can develop strategies for proactively addressing triggers. If being asked to do something last minute triggers stress, you can set boundaries or practice a brief mindfulness exercise.
So, it's about anticipating and preparing. It's not just understanding the cause, but having a plan for what to do.
That's the essence of prevention. And if triggers seem overwhelming or difficult to identify, seeking support from a therapist or counselor can be incredibly beneficial. They have tools to help you explore these patterns safely.
That's a really important point. personal growth can be challenging. So, to sum up, identifying our emotional triggers is vital for mastering our reactions. By reflecting, journaling, and asking probing questions, we build a personal trigger map. This illuminates the root causes of impulsive behaviors, empowering us to move from reactivity to thoughtful response.
And as we build this awareness, remember it's a skill that develops over time. Be patient. Celebrate small victories. Every time you recognize a trigger before you react, you're gaining more control.
It's about building self awareness, one trigger at a time.
Exactly. In our next episode, we'll discuss strategies for navigating high-stakes conversations. We'll explore how to apply the pause and our newfound awareness when the pressure is really on.
Looking forward to that.
Until then, keep practicing the pause. Welcome back. Last time we covered identifying your triggers. Now let's tackle navigating high-stakes conversations. Today we're diving into one of the most challenging aspects of mastering the pause, applying it when the stakes are high. When emotions run intense, the pressure mounts, and consequences feel significant. That's precisely when our pause technique becomes most valuable.
I can totally relate to this. It's one thing to practice the pause when you're just having a regular disagreement, but when it's something really important, like a performance review at work or a serious conversation with a partner, suddenly all those techniques fly out the window, and you're just reacting.
Exactly, Lisa. And that's precisely why we need to be intentional about preparation and practice. High-stakes conversations are often characterized by a few key elements: strong emotions, potential for misunderstanding, and significant consequences. Think about a tense negotiation, a delicate discussion about finances, or even addressing a serious conflict with a friend. In these moments, the urge to defend, attack, or withdraw is powerful.
So, how do we counter that urge when the pressure is on?
The core principle remains the same. Create space between the stimulus and your response. But in high-stakes scenarios, we employ a few advanced strategies. First, remember the 7-second rule we discussed? It's crucial here. Take those initial 7 seconds to breathe, acknowledge your emotional state without judgment, and consciously choose your next move.
7 seconds can feel like an eternity when you're feeling attacked or misunderstood. What's going through your mind in those 7 seconds?
That's where de-escalation self-talk comes in. Instead of letting your mind race with anxious thoughts or angry retorts, engage in calming affirmations. You might tell yourself, I can handle this. My goal is to be understood, not to win, or this person is likely feeling their own pressure too. This internal dialogue helps regulate your nervous system.
So, it's like a mental reset button. Instead of spiraling, you're guiding your thoughts towards a more constructive path.
Precisely. And hand in hand with self-talk is engaging your prefrontal cortex, the architect of thoughtful responses. When you become aware of your rising emotions, you can make a conscious effort to activate this part of your brain. This might involve deep breathing exercises or even a quick mental scan of the situation, asking yourself what outcome you truly desire.
I found that when I'm already stressed, my PFC feels like it's offline. How do we bring it back online during a heated moment?
It's a skill that improves with practice. Before the high-stakes conversation even begins, visualizing yourself navigating it calmly can be incredibly powerful. Imagine yourself pausing, breathing, and responding thoughtfully. This mental rehearsal primes your brain for a similar response when the actual event occurs. Also try grounding techniques. Focus on your physical sensations, your feet on the floor, the feel of your chair. This brings you back to the present moment and away from the emotional storm.
That makes sense. So, preparation is key. What if you're caught off guard and a high stakes conversation erupts unexpectedly?
In those moments, the initial 7 seconds are even more critical. Recognize the unexpected nature of the situation. Your immediate reaction might be surprise or alarm. Use those 7 seconds to simply acknowledge that. Then, employ your self-talk. Okay, this is happening. I need to stay calm. The goal isn't to solve everything instantly, but to prevent an immediate, regrettable reaction.
Can you give us an example of a high-stakes conversation and how we might apply these tools? Let's say it's a performance review. Your boss is giving you some tough feedback, and you feel defensive.
Okay, let's break that down. Your boss starts delivering critical feedback. You begin feeling your stomach clench. Your thoughts turn to "this isn't fair," or "they don't understand my effort."
Oh, that's the amygdala hijack territory.
Exactly. So, the first thing you do is pause. Take a deep breath. You might even subtly shift your posture. Your self-talk kicks in. Breathe. Listen. Don't interrupt. This is feedback, not an attack. You consciously try to engage your PFC by focusing on understanding your boss's perspective, even if you disagree.
So, instead of immediately firing back with justifications, you're creating that boundary.
Yes. And you might say something like, "Thank you for that feedback. I want to make sure I fully understand. Could you give me an example of when you observe that behavior?" This simple question serves multiple purposes. It buys you more time, it demonstrates your listening, and it prompts them to be more specific, which can often de-escalate the situation.
That's brilliant. It shifts the dynamic from an accusation to a collaborative problem-solving effort. What about difficult conversations with loved ones? Say, your partner feels you haven't been present enough.
This is another classic high-stakes scenario. Your partner expresses their feelings, and you might feel guilty, misunderstood, or even attacked. Again, the pause is paramount. Take in what they're saying. Your self-talk might be, "I hear you're hurting. My intention is to be a good partner. How can we address this together?"
And when they say you're never present, it's so easy to say that's not true. I do X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely. That's the reactive impulse. Instead, in your pause, you might activate your PFC by recalling times you have been present or by focusing on the desired outcome, a stronger relationship. You could respond with, "I hear that you feel I haven't been present, and that must be difficult. I want to understand more. Can you tell me what behaviors make you feel that way?" This is mindful listening in action, combined with the pause and constructive self-talk.
It's about validating their feelings without necessarily agreeing with the extreme framing.
Exactly. You're not saying, "You're right, I'm a terrible partner." You're saying, "I understand your perception and I want to understand it better so we can move forward." By applying the pause, you transform a potential argument into an opportunity for deeper connection and understanding. This is the essence of navigating high-stakes conversations with intention rather than by instinct.
So, to recap for our listeners, in high-stakes conversations, the pause is even more critical. Preparation, through visualization and mental rehearsal, is vital. When the moment hits, activate the 7-second rule. Use de-escalation self-talk to calm your internal storm and consciously engage your prefrontal cortex to think thoughtfully. Grounding techniques can also help pull you back to the present.
And remember, the goal isn't to eliminate emotion, but to manage it. It's about responding from a place of reason and awareness, even when emotions are running high. This allows you to articulate your needs, understand others, and work towards constructive solutions. By practicing these techniques, you can transform potentially destructive encounters into opportunities for growth and stronger relationships.
It really is about shifting from a defensive posture to a proactive one, even when the external situation feels overwhelming. And you've given us such practical ways to do that.
Thank you, Lisa. Mastering the pause in these challenging moments is a testament to how far we've come in building emotional intelligence. It's where the real transformation happens, moving from merely reacting to consciously creating the outcomes we desire. Next episode, we'll expand on managing external influences that can shake our composure. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time, we explored navigating high-stakes conversations. Today, we're talking about handling accusations and criticism without immediately shutting down or lashing out.
That's such a crucial skill, Alex. It's so easy to feel attacked when someone criticizes you or accuses you of something, and your natural instinct is to defend yourself, often aggressively. But that usually just escalates things. So, how do we deflect?
You've hit the nail on the head, Lisa. The key is to understand that deflection isn't about winning an argument or proving the other person wrong. It's about acknowledging their feelings or perspective while also holding onto your own reality, all without getting drawn into an unproductive battle. And guess what the first step is? You guessed it, the pause.
The pause. Of course. It gives us that essential space. So, a criticism or accusation comes in, we pause. And then what?
Then we practice what's often called acknowledging and bridging. This means you first acknowledge the other person's statement or feeling, and then you bridge to your perspective or a more constructive path. Think of it as validating their experience without necessarily agreeing with their accusation.
Acknowledging their experience. Can you give us an example? Let's say someone accuses me of being unorganized at work.
Okay, so imagine your colleague snaps, Lisa, you never submit your reports on time. It completely messes up my workflow.
My immediate thought would be, that's not true. I always get them in by the deadline. But that's defensive, right?
Exactly. Instead of jumping to defend, you take that breath. Then you might say something like, I hear that you're feeling frustrated because my reports are impacting your workflow. See how you're not saying, yes, I'm unorganized, or no, you're wrong. You're just reflecting back what you're hearing their emotion is.
Okay, I hear that you're feeling frustrated because my reports are impacting your workflow. That feels much less confrontational. So, what's the bridging part?
The bridge is where you can offer your perspective or a solution, but gently. You could continue with, I want to make sure things run smoothly for everyone. My intention is always to get my reports in on time. Let's take a look at the submission dates together. Perhaps we can find a way to ensure they reach you when you need them.
So, I acknowledge their frustration, then I state my intention to be timely, and then I suggest a collaborative solution. That sounds so much more productive than me just yelling back. I do submit them on time.
Precisely. You've deflected the direct accusation by focusing on the shared goal of a smooth workflow. You're not saying they're wrong. You're not saying you're wrong. You're just moving toward the problem-solving space. This deflects the emotional charge of the accusation itself.
It's like redirecting a river of conflict into a more peaceful lake of collaboration.
That's a great analogy, Lisa. And this technique is especially powerful because it avoids the trap of needing to be right. When we're accused, we often feel this primal urge to prove innocence. But in many situations, especially in interpersonal or work relationships, proving you're right isn't as important as maintaining a good working relationship or fostering understanding.
That's a really important point to internalize. The desire to be right can be a huge obstacle to effective communication. So, acknowledging their perspective and then bridging to a shared goal. What about criticism that feels more personal? Someone saying, you're always so negative.
That's a tough one because always and negative are broad brushes. Again, the pause is your first line of defense. Then, you can use a similar acknowledging and bridging approach. You might say, it sounds like you've been feeling that I'm bringing a lot of negativity lately, and that's concerning to you.
I hear that you've been feeling that I'm bringing a lot of negativity lately, and that's concerning to you. That definitely softens the blow.
It does. And then you can bridge. You could say, I value your feedback, and I want to understand what specifically I'm doing that's coming across that way. My intention is never to be negative. This opens the door for them to give you specific examples, which is much more actionable than a general accusation.
Instead of getting defensive about the label negative, I'm asking for concrete examples so I can actually understand and potentially change my behavior. That's brilliant. It shifts the focus from a personal attack to a communication issue.
Exactly. You're deflecting the attack itself by inviting a more specific and therefore less emotionally charged conversation. You're not saying, I'm not negative. You're saying, help me understand when you perceive me as negative.
This also works when you feel you've made a mistake, but the accusation from someone else is magnified or unfair.
Absolutely. Let's say you accidentally send an email to the wrong person. Your boss might say, you can't be trusted to handle confidential information. That's a huge accusation, and it's probably an overreaction to one error.
My gut reaction is to flood them with reasons why it was a one-off, or why the information wasn't that confidential.
And that's understandable, but try this, pause. Then acknowledge. I understand your concern about the handling of sensitive information, especially after my mistake with that email. Then bridge. I take full responsibility for that error, and I'm committed to ensuring it doesn't happen again. I'm going to implement a new double-check system before sending any emails that contain sensitive data.
So, I take responsibility for the specific error, acknowledge their concern about sensitive information, and then propose a concrete solution to rebuild trust for the future. This is so much more powerful than just saying, I'm sorry, which can sound hollow.
It is. You've deflected the overwhelming accusation of can't be trusted by focusing on the specific event and your commitment to future accuracy. You're showing maturity and a proactive approach. The goal isn't to shield yourself from all criticism, but to manage the reception of it so it doesn't derail you or the relationship.
It's about maintaining your composure and dignity, even when under fire. It's like a skilled martial artist using an opponent's force against them.
Another excellent analogy. And what this does on a deeper level is train your brain away from that amygdala hijack response. When you practice acknowledging and bridging instead of immediately defending, you're actively engaging your prefrontal cortex, your thoughtful brain. You're teaching it that accusations and criticism aren't necessarily threats, but opportunities for clarification and growth.
So, the key elements of deflection are pause, acknowledge the other person's perspective or feelings, and bridge to your own perspective or a collaborative solution. And always remember that the goal is constructive dialogue, not winning an argument.
Exactly. And don't be discouraged if it feels awkward at first. Like any new skill, it takes practice. The more you consciously choose to pause and use these techniques, the more natural they will become. You'll start to notice that instead of feeling flustered or angry, you feel more in control and capable of handling difficult interactions.
It's about shifting from a reactive stance to a proactive and empowered one. By deflecting without being defensive, you maintain your own emotional balance and often you foster better communication and understanding in the long run.
And that's the essence of mastering the pause. It's not about avoiding difficult conversations, but about having them with more skill, calm, and effectiveness. Deflection is a vital tool in that kit.
So to recap, acknowledge their feelings, then bridge to your reality or a shared goal. This simple, yet powerful, technique can turn potential confrontations into opportunities for understanding. It's about redirecting the energy of criticism towards a more constructive outcome.
And with that, we've armed ourselves with another powerful tool. Next time, we're going to talk about building your resilience, how to bounce back stronger when life inevitably throws challenges your way. Next episode, building emotional resilience. Welcome back. Last time we explored the art of deflection, learning how to skillfully navigate accusations and criticism.
And today, Alex, we're diving into something crucial for long-term success with these skills, building emotional resilience. It sounds like a big concept, but how does our pause play into it?
That's a great question, Lisa. Emotional resilience is essentially our ability to bounce back from adversity. It's about navigating life's inevitable challenges, the setbacks, the disappointments, the stressful events, without getting completely derailed. And the pause is a cornerstone of this.
So, when we're talking about bouncing back, what does that look like in practice? Is it about not feeling the pain, or is it something else?
It's definitely not about not feeling the emotions. That would be unhealthy. Instead, resilience is about how we respond to those difficult emotions and situations. When we're able to pause, we create a crucial moment between an event and our reaction. This space is incredibly powerful.
Think of it like this. Imagine you're playing with a ball. If you just react instantly, you might catch it awkwardly, stumble, or even drop it. But if you take a tiny pause, you can adjust your stance, position your hands perfectly, and catch it smoothly. The pause lets us regain control.
Exactly. And in that moment of the pause, we prevent an immediate, often unhelpful emotional hijack. Remember our discussions about the amygdala, the brain's alarm system? When we get triggered, the amygdala takes over, flooding our system with stress hormones and pushing our rational thinking to the side.
Right? The fight or flight response kicks in and we're not thinking clearly. It's in those moments that we might say or do things we regret.
Precisely. But when we can consciously engage our pause, we give our prefrontal cortex, the architect of thoughtful responses, a chance to catch up. This allows us to process the situation more calmly and choose a more constructive response rather than a knee-jerk reaction.
And that choice, that considered response, is what builds resilience over time. It's like exercising a muscle, isn't it? The more we practice pausing, the stronger our ability to handle stress becomes.
Absolutely. Each time you use the pause during a stressful conversation or a frustrating experience, you're reinforcing a neural pathway. You're essentially training your brain to default to a more measured response. This makes you less susceptible to emotional hijacking in the future.
So, it's not about being immune to stress, but about developing better coping mechanisms. Less emotional toll, more effective problem solving.
You've got it. When we react impulsively, especially in challenging situations, the emotional fallout can be significant. We might experience anxiety, anger, or sadness that lingers. But by pausing and responding thoughtfully, we can often de-escalate the situation, address the root problem more effectively, and therefore, reduce the prolonged emotional distress.
It sounds like a proactive approach to managing our inner world. Instead of just weathering the storm, we're learning to navigate it more skillfully.
That's a perfect analogy. And the benefits extend beyond just individual stress. When we're more resilient, we're better equipped to face challenges in our relationships, our careers, and our personal lives. We don't crumble, we adapt and learn.
Can you give us an example of how this might play out?
Certainly. Imagine you're working on a project at work, and a colleague makes a critical comment that feels unfair. Your initial impulse might be to defend yourself aggressively or withdraw completely. But if you pause, you give yourself a moment to consider. Is the criticism valid? Is there a misunderstanding? What is the best way to address this constructively?
Instead of immediately feeling attacked and entering a defensive mode, the pause allows for a more objective assessment.
Yes, you might realize there's a misunderstanding and calmly explain your perspective, where you might see a valid point and acknowledge it, suggesting a solution. Both of these are far more resilient responses than an argument or sulking, which would likely prolong negative feelings and damage the working relationship.
This makes sense, because when we don't pause, we're often operating on assumptions and immediate emotional reactions. It's like driving with blinders on.
Exactly. And that leads to more mistakes, more conflict, and ultimately, more emotional wear and tear. Building resilience through the pause is about reducing that wear and tear. It's about preserving our energy and our mental well-being so we have more to give when we need it.
So, we're not just learning techniques for specific difficult moments, but we're fundamentally changing our baseline for how we handle life's ups and downs.
Precisely. It's about shifting towards a default mode of calm and considered action. This doesn't happen overnight, of course. It requires consistent practice. Every time you consciously choose to pause, you're building the resilience muscle. You're strengthening your capacity to bounce back.
It's a long-term investment in our emotional well-being, and we're seeing how the pause is the tool that facilitates this growth.
Indeed. Think about it. Resilience isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about growing stronger because of it. And that growth is facilitated by our ability to pause, reflect, and respond intentionally. Without that pause, we're simply reacting to our circumstances, often in ways that create more problems and more emotional distress.
It's empowering to know that we can actively cultivate this ability. It's not something you're just born with or without.
Absolutely not. Resilience is a skill, and like any skill, it can be learned and strengthened. And the pause is your fundamental tool for unlocking that potential. It allows us to move from being swept away by our emotions to being in command of how we experience and respond to them.
So, to recap, emotional resilience is our ability to bounce back from adversity. The pause creates space between an event and our reaction, preventing immediate emotional hijacks. This space allows our rational brain to engage, leading to more constructive responses. Consistent practice of the pause trains our brain to respond calmly, reducing emotional toll and improving problem solving, ultimately building a stronger, more adaptable self.
That's a fantastic summary, Lisa. It highlights how the pause isn't just a quick fix, but a foundational practice for long-term emotional well-being and strength. It's about shifting from a reactive life to a life of intention.
And that brings us to the end of another key aspect of mastering the pause. We've seen how it helps us manage our immediate reactions, and now, how it builds our capacity to handle life's bigger challenges.
This emphasis on long-term benefits is what truly transforms the pause from a technique into a way of life. It's about building a default mode of calm that serves us consistently.
And speaking of extending these skills, what's next for us?
In our next episode, we'll explore how to apply these principles beyond our individual interactions and into group dynamics. We'll look at how mastering the pause can help us lead by example and foster calmer, more productive environments when we're with others.
That sounds incredibly practical. Leading by example is so important.
It truly is. We'll see how our personal practice of the pause can ripple outwards. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time we covered building emotional resilience. Now let's tackle group dynamics.
It's like a ripple effect, Alex. We've spent so much time on building our own internal pause button, and now we're going to see how that can create calm in a whole room. So, how does this concept of the pause translate when you're in a meeting, or with a group of friends, or even at a family gathering?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? In group dynamics, things can escalate much faster. Imagine a meeting where two people are disagreeing heatedly. Without a pause, it can quickly turn into a shouting match, or people shutting down and avoiding the conversation altogether. But when one person, even if they're not the leader, consciously takes a breath, pauses before they speak, or asks a clarifying question instead of jumping to conclusions, something magical happens. They create space.
Space for what? For the other person to cool down?
Exactly. That space allows the other person's amygdala to settle a little. Remember our episodes on amygdala hijacks? When someone is in high gear, fueled by emotion, they're not receptive to logic or empathy. A pause, even from an observer, can give them that moment to step back from the brink. It also signals that you're not going to fuel the fire. You're not going to react with your own heightened emotions.
So, by simply not jumping into the fray with an equally intense response, you're actually diffusing the situation. It's like you're offering a cool cloth instead of adding more heat.
Precisely. And it's not just about de-escalation. Think about brainstorming sessions or problem solving in a team. Often, the loudest voices dominate, where the first ideas presented get all the focus. When we practice the pause, we become more mindful listeners. We hear what others are saying, not just what we think they're saying or what we want to say next. This leads to richer discussion and better collective decision making.
I can see that. If everyone is just waiting for their turn to talk or thinking about how to defend their own point, we miss out on valuable input. So, the pause helps us to be truly present in the conversation.
Absolutely. And this brings us to a crucial aspect, modeling behavior. When you consistently demonstrate the ability to pause, to think before you respond, especially under pressure, you become a powerful role model. People notice that. They see that it's possible to have difficult conversations without blowing up. This can subtly encourage others to adopt similar behaviors.
It's like, if Alex can stay calm when that person is being difficult, maybe I can too. It sets a new standard for how the group interacts.
Exactly. And this is particularly important if you're in a leadership position or even just a respected member of a team. Your reactions, or your lack of reactions, can shape the emotional climate of the entire group. Think about it. If the leader frequently interrupts, becomes defensive, or gets visibly frustrated, the whole team will likely feel anxious and more prone to conflict.
That makes sense. The leader's energy really sets the tone. So, what are some practical ways we can apply this leading by example in group settings?
Great question. One is to actively practice mindful listening. Before you respond in a group discussion, especially a contentious one, ask yourself, what is the speaker really trying to convey? Don't just listen for points to counter. Listen for underlying needs or concerns. This might mean paraphrasing what you heard. So, if I understand correctly, you're saying that we need more resources for this project. Is that right? This shows you're engaged and taking their perspective seriously, and it also gives them a chance to clarify.
That's a wonderful technique. It pulls people back to clarity and shows respect, which is a great antidote to rising tension.
Another is the intentional pause before speaking. When it's your turn, or when you feel the urge to jump in, consciously take that breath. Count to 3 in your head. This brief delay can prevent you from uttering something you'll regret, something that might escalate the conflict rather than resolve it. It gives your prefrontal cortex a chance to catch up with your amygdala.
So, it's about deliberately slowing down the pace of the conversation.
Yes, and related to that is asking clarifying questions. Instead of making assumptions or jumping to conclusions about someone's intent, ask questions like, could you tell me more about what you mean by that? Or what outcome are you hoping for with that suggestion? This encourages deeper understanding and often uncovers common ground you might not have seen otherwise. It shifts the dynamic from adversarial to collaborative.
I like this. It's not about being passive, it's about being strategic in your communication to foster a more positive and productive environment.
Precisely. And it's also about managing your own emotional responses. In a group setting, it's easy to get caught up in the collective energy, whether it's excitement or frustration. Staying aware of your own emotional state is key. If you feel yourself getting heated, take that internal pause. Excuse yourself for a moment if necessary. Removing yourself temporarily can be a powerful way to regain composure and prevent you from contributing to a negative dynamic.
Taking a walk around the block, so to speak, during a tense meeting.
Exactly. And this leads to another point, channeling emotions constructively. Sometimes frustration in a group is valid, but instead of expressing it as anger or blame, reframe it. Instead of saying, this is a terrible idea, you could say, I have some concerns about this approach. Can we explore how it might impact X, Y, and Z? This acknowledges the issue without resorting to emotional outbursts, while still bringing important considerations to the table.
So, you're still addressing the problem, but in a way that invites collaboration rather than defensiveness.
That's the goal. And finally, recognize that this is a skill that takes practice. You won't be perfect every time, especially in a heated group setting. There will be moments when you slip up, and that's where the next vital piece comes in. It's worth mentioning now, self-compassion.
Oh, I'm so glad we're going to talk about self-compassion. Because sometimes I feel like a failure when I react impulsively in a group, and it's hard to get back on track.
Totally understandable. But the important thing is that you're aware of it. And your willingness to apply these pause principles, even in a group, is already a sign of progress. When you manage to stay calm, ask a clarifying question, or simply listen without interrupting, you are leading by example. You're planting seeds of mindful communication.
It's about creating that ripple effect, isn't it? One person's consistent practice can influence the entire dynamic, fostering a more respectful, understanding, and effective group environment.
Absolutely. And this is how we move from individual mastery of the pause to community-wide impact, by being mindful of our own reactions. And by consciously choosing thoughtful responses, we create a space where others feel safer to do the same. We become agents of calm and clarity in our interactions, transforming tense situations into opportunities for connection and progress.
So, to recap, in group settings, the power of the pause allows us to de-escalate tension by creating breathing room, to practice mindful listening that uncovers deeper understanding, and to model calm, considered responses that can influence the entire group's behavior. We can use techniques like paraphrasing, asking clarifying questions, and reframing our concerns constructively, all while remaining aware of our own emotional state. It's about individual practice leading to collective positive change.
Beautifully summarized, Lisa. The pause isn't just about individual peace. It's about fostering collective peace. It's about understanding that our actions, even our moments of stillness, have a profound impact on those around us.
And that's a powerful lesson for any team, any family, any community.
It truly is. And as we look ahead, we'll be exploring how to extend that same kindness and understanding to ourselves on this journey.
Ah, self-compassion. I can't wait for that.
So, that brings us to the end of this episode. Next episode, self-compassion on the journey, forgiving lapses and continuing forward. Welcome back. Last time, we explored how to build emotional resilience. Now, let's discuss self-compassion on your journey of growth.
That's so true, Alex. We're all human, and there will be times when we slip up, when the automatic response kicks in before we even realize it. It's easy to get discouraged or even beat ourselves up when that happens.
Exactly. And that's precisely why today's topic is so crucial. If we're constantly criticizing ourselves for not being perfect, we create an internal barrier to our own progress. It's like trying to climb a mountain while carrying a heavy sack of self-doubt.
So, how do we approach self-compassion when we've perhaps reacted in a way we regret? What does it actually look like in practice?
That's a great question. At its core, self-compassion involves treating ourselves with the same kindness, understanding, and support that we would offer a good friend who is struggling. Think about it. If a friend came to you after making a mistake, would you immediately tell them they're terrible and should give up?
Of course not. I'd likely say something like, "It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. What can we learn from this?" Or, "Don't be so hard on yourself."
Precisely. Self-compassion is about extending that same grace inward. It has three main components. The first is self-kindness. This means being warm and understanding towards ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than ignoring our pain or criticizing ourselves.
So, instead of thinking, "Ugh, I can't believe I just interrupted them again," it would be more like, "Okay, I noticed I interrupted. That wasn't ideal, but I'm still learning."
You've got it. The second component is common humanity. This acknowledges that suffering and personal inadequacy are part of the shared human experience. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone feels pain. Everyone experiences moments of failure. It's not just you.
This is a powerful reminder. It combats that feeling of isolation we can sometimes experience when we feel we've fallen short. It helps us realize we're not alone in our imperfections.
Absolutely. And the third component is mindfulness. This involves observing our negative thoughts and emotions without judgment, without suppressing them, but also without getting carried away by them. It means acknowledging, yes, I'm feeling frustrated right now, rather than trying to shove that feeling down or immediately act on it with anger.
So, to recap those three components, self-kindness, recognizing our common humanity, and mindful observation of our feelings without getting lost in them. That sounds like a really balanced approach.
It truly is. And when we integrate these principles, they can transform how we handle those inevitable moments when we don't pause effectively. Instead of viewing a lapse as a failure, we can see it as an opportunity to practice self-compassion and learn.
Can you give us an example of how we might apply this after a heated conversation where we reacted impulsively?
Imagine you had a disagreement with a colleague. In the heat of the moment, you said something sharp and regretful. You've ended the conversation, and now you're replaying it in your head. Your inner critic might be screaming, "You always do this. You're impossible to work with,"
Oh, I can definitely picture that inner monologue.
right? Now, in this scenario, self-compassion would encourage you to pause, take a breath, and then internally say something like, "Okay, that was a tough conversation, and I reacted more strongly than I intended. I'm feeling some shame and frustration about what I said." That's self-kindness, acknowledging the pain without judgment.
So, accepting that it happened and that you're feeling negative emotions about it.
Exactly. Then, you'd bring in common humanity. It's understandable that these situations are challenging, and it's normal to sometimes react imperfectly when we feel defensive or misunderstood. Many people struggle with managing their reactions under pressure. This connects you to others and takes away the burden of feeling uniquely flawed.
That really does shift the perspective. Instead of feeling like the only one who can't get it right, you realize it's a universal human challenge.
And finally, mindfulness comes in by observing those feelings without getting stuck. You might notice, "I'm feeling this hot flush of shame now, and my stomach is tight," but you don't have to dwell on, "I'm a terrible person." You're simply observing the physical and emotional sensations associated with the regret.
So, the self-compassionate response is less about fixing the immediate mistake in that moment of regret and more about how you treat yourself in the aftermath.
Precisely. It's about creating a supportive inner environment that allows for learning and growth. When we are kind to ourselves, we're more open to examining what happened without defensiveness. We can ask, what was I feeling just before I reacted? What was the trigger? What could I try differently next time?
This sounds like it helps prevent a downward spiral. If you're self-critical, you might feel so discouraged that you give up on trying to pause altogether. But with self-compassion, you feel empowered to try again.
That's exactly the power of it. Self-compassion is not an excuse for poor behavior, but rather a foundation for understanding and improvement. It fosters emotional regulation. When we're not busy fighting our own self-criticism, we have more energy and mental space to reflect and adjust our future behavior.
It's like building a supportive ally within ourselves. We're not our own worst enemy. We're actually on our own side.
That's a perfect way to put it, Lisa. And this inner ally is crucial because, let's be honest, mastering the pause is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be setbacks. There will be moments where old habits rear their heads.
And if we've been practicing self-compassion, those setbacks become less about failure and more about valuable data points for our personal growth journey.
Absolutely. Think about learning any complex skill, like playing a musical instrument or a sport. Do you expect to be perfect from day one? No. You practice, you make mistakes, you get feedback, and you keep going. Self-compassion allows us to approach this skill of pausing with that same patient, persistent outlook.
It reframes mistakes from something to be ashamed of into something to learn from. And that makes the whole process feel much less daunting.
Indeed, when we're kind to ourselves, we also build resilience. We bounce back more quickly from difficult interactions. We're less likely to ruminate on past mistakes, allowing us to be more present and effective in our current interactions. Remember episode 11, where we talked about building emotional resilience? Self-compassion is a key ingredient in that process.
That's a wonderful callback. It shows how all these concepts we've been discussing really build on each other. Self-compassion is the gentle soil in which the seeds of intentional action can grow.
Well said. It's about acknowledging that our journey with the pause is ongoing. We are always learning, always evolving, and offering ourselves compassion during this process is not a sign of weakness, but of profound strength and wisdom. It's the essential ingredient that allows us to keep going even when things get tough.
So, when you find yourself reacting before you pause, try to offer yourself that same kindness, that understanding, and that recognition that you're part of the vast human experience of learning and growing. It's about progress, not perfection, and self-compassion is your faithful companion on that path.
Exactly. We've covered a lot of ground in this series, moving from understanding our automatic reactions to developing practical tools for pausing, and now to the vital practice of self-compassion. This journey of learning to think before we react is a continuous one, and approaching it with kindness towards ourselves is perhaps one of the most powerful strategies we can employ.
It's a beautiful way to conclude our discussion about managing reactions. We've equipped ourselves with incredible tools, and now we know how to support ourselves when we need them, or when we sometimes miss the opportunity.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Think Before You React. Now, let's explore shifting from reaction to purposeful action.
That's right, Alex. We've learned tools like the 7-second rule and de-escalation self-talk. Now, it's time to ask ourselves, what do we want to achieve with that pause? How can we use that space to choose a positive, purposeful response?
So, it's about moving beyond simply not reacting impulsively to actively choosing how we want to respond, right?
Exactly. If we only focus on stopping the negative, we can end up in a kind of limbo. True growth comes when we start directing that newfound space towards something constructive.
So, instead of just thinking, don't yell, we start thinking, what's the best way to communicate what I need right now?
Precisely. It's about asking yourself, what is my intention in this moment? This question is your compass. It helps you navigate towards actions that align with your values and your long-term goals, rather than being swept away by immediate emotions or external pressures.
That makes sense. Our values and goals are like our personal North Star. They guide us. But when we're caught in a reactive loop, we can easily lose sight of them.
Absolutely. Let's say your core value is respect. If someone interrupts you repeatedly, your immediate, reactive impulse might be to interrupt them back, or to shut down completely in frustration. But if you pause and ask, what is my intention? You might realize your intention is to have your point heard and to maintain a respectful dialogue.
Okay, so knowing that intention, how do I act on it? How do I go from, I want to be heard respectfully, to actually communicating that effectively?
This is where the pause becomes a bridge, not just a barrier. Once you've identified your intention, you can then consciously choose a response that serves it. In our respect example, instead of interrupting back, you might take a breath and say calmly, "Excuse me, I'd like to finish my thought, if that's okay."
Ah, I see. So you're using the pause to access your intentionality, and then the intentionality guides your precise words and actions. It's not just about being calm, but being calmly purposeful.
That's a great way to put it, Alex. It's about shifting from being driven by external stimuli or internal emotional turbulence to being driven by your inner compass.
How do we start identifying what those underlying intentions and values really are? It sounds like a really important first step.
It is. And it's something that develops over time. A good starting point is to reflect on moments where you felt you reacted poorly or moments where you felt you responded really well. Ask yourself, what was I trying to achieve in those situations? Was I trying to be right? To be safe? To be heard? To connect? To protect myself? Noticing these underlying desires is the first step to understanding your common reactions.
So, it's like a detective mission into our own motivations.
Exactly. And it's also about looking ahead. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of relationships do you want to build? What kind of impact do you want to have? When you have a clear vision of your long-term aspirations, it becomes much easier to see how your immediate responses either move you closer to or further away from those aspirations.
This feels really empowering. It's like the pause isn't just giving us control, it's giving us direction.
That's the essence of cultivating intention. It's the purposeful application of the pause. For instance, imagine you're in a team meeting and a colleague presents an idea you immediately disagree with. Your reactive habit might be to jump in with all the reasons why it won't work.
Yeah, that's a common one. But what about X, Y, and Z?
Right. Now let's apply intention. You pause. You acknowledge your initial reaction, maybe a wave of skepticism or even annoyance. Then you ask yourself, what is my intention here? Is it simply to poke holes in their idea? Or is it to contribute to the best possible outcome for the project?
If my intention is the latter, my response would be very different.
Indeed. With that intention, you might say, that's an interesting approach. I'm wondering how it might address specific challenge. Could you elaborate on that aspect? This is still critical thinking, but it's constructive, collaborative, and aligned with the intention of finding the best solution, not just proving yourself right.
This is subtle but so powerful. It's reframing conflict into collaboration.
And it's about being that architect of your own responses. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning and rational thought, is what helps you engage in this intentionality. Actively using your values and goals provides the blueprint for how you want your responses to be constructed.
So, we've learned about the pause. We've learned how to manage our brain's alarm system when it senses danger. We've learned to engage our rational thinking. Now, we're layering intentionality on top of that. It's about understanding why we want to respond, not just how to respond calmly.
Precisely. It's about bridging the gap between a knee-jerk reaction and a deliberate, aligned action. Imagine your life as a journey. The pause is your decision to check the map and confirm your destination. Your values and goals are the map itself, and your intentions are the specific turns and directions you choose to take to get where you want to go.
And so often, we just keep driving without ever looking at the map, or we let the road decide where we end up.
Exactly. Cultivating intention means you are the driver. You are making conscious choices about your path. It requires practice, of course. It's not about achieving perfect intentionality overnight.
That's a good point. What happens when we try and our intention wavers, or we slip back into old habits?
This is where self-compassion, which we touched on in a previous episode, is so important. If you notice yourself reacting impulsively, don't beat yourself up. Simply acknowledge it, perhaps reflect on what might have led to it, and then recommit to checking in with your intention the next time. It's a continuous process of learning and refinement.
So, the intention is like a guiding principle. It's what we aim for, and the pause is the mechanism that allows us to check that principle before we act.
That's a perfect summary, Alex. The pause gives you the breathing room to ask, what do I truly want to accomplish in this interaction? What aligns with who I am and who I want to be? This fundamental question transforms your responses from being reactive to being purposeful. It's about shifting from, what just happened to me, to, what do I want to create now?
That fundamental question is key. What do I want to create now? It shifts the focus from past events to future possibilities.
Yes. And when you consistently ask that question and act on the answers that align with your deeper intentions, you begin to live a life of greater meaning and purpose. Your actions, born from intention, become a reflection of your values, leading to more fulfilling interactions and a stronger sense of self.
It's about aligning our actions with our deeper selves. making sure that what we do on the outside truly matches what we aspire to on the inside.
Exactly. It's the ultimate goal of mastering the pause, not just to avoid negative outcomes, but to actively build the life and relationships you desire, one intentional response at a time.
Lisa, this has been incredibly insightful. Shifting our focus from just avoiding negative reactions to actively choosing purposeful ones is a game changer. It truly bridges the gap between understanding the tools and applying them with real direction.
It's about living with a greater sense of agency and purpose. And as we move towards the final episodes, we'll explore how to make these intentional responses a natural, ingrained habit.
Fantastic. Next episode, reinforcing the habit, making the pause your default mode. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Think Before You React. We explored cultivating intention, shifting from reaction to purposeful action. Today, we're reinforcing the habit of making the pause your default mode.
That's a crucial step, Alex. We've learned about our brains, creating space, and choosing thoughtful responses. But how do we ensure these skills stick when life gets stressful? How do we make pausing as natural as breathing?
That's the goal, embedding these practices so they become automatic. Think of learning to ride a bike. It requires conscious effort at first, but with practice, you just do it. Our pause habit needs to reach that level of ingrained behavior.
I love that analogy. So, what are some actionable strategies to get there?
The first key is consistent, deliberate practice in low-stakes situations. Don't wait for a major conflict to try out your pause. Throughout your day, in everyday interactions, consciously practice creating that 3 to 7 seconds of space. This could be in a casual conversation, when deciding what to eat, or even when reacting to an email.
So, small moments become training grounds for bigger ones?
Precisely. Each time you catch yourself before a knee-jerk reaction and consciously choose to pause, you're strengthening that neural pathway. You're reinforcing the habit. These small wins accumulate. Practice the 7-second rule, even when there's no pressure. Just take 7 seconds to check in with yourself before responding to a simple query.
That makes sense. It's like building muscle memory for calm. What about when we do slip up?
It absolutely will happen, and that's where self-compassion comes back in. Acknowledge the slip-up without judgment. Instead of "I blew it," reframe it as "Okay, that was a reaction. What can I learn, and how can I apply the pause next time?" This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Analyze what led to the reaction. Understanding the why helps you prepare for future situations.
So, instead of beating ourselves up, we become detectives of our own behavior.
Exactly. And to aid in this, establishing accountability is incredibly helpful. Sharing your goal of reinforcing the pause habit with a trusted friend, partner, or mentor can provide a gentle nudge. They can remind you or simply ask how your practice is going, creating a sense of responsibility.
That's a great idea. Having someone else invested in your progress can make a big difference. It's like having a personal trainer for your emotional regulation.
A perfect analogy, Lisa. Another powerful technique for reinforcement is journaling. Briefly jotting down instances where you successfully used the pause or where you missed an opportunity can provide valuable insights. What was the situation? What was your immediate impulse? What did you do instead? What was the outcome? This practice creates a concrete record of your progress and highlights patterns you might otherwise overlook.
So, it's not just about the big, dramatic moments, but also about the subtle shifts we make throughout our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely. We need to create an environment that supports this new habit. This can involve consciously choosing less triggering situations to practice in initially, or even modifying your surroundings or routines to minimize potential triggers. For example, if you know certain news or social media feeds tend to provoke an immediate Emotional response. You might choose to limit your exposure or engage with them when you feel more centered and capable of pausing.
That's proactive self-management. We're not just reacting to our environment, we're shaping it to help us succeed.
Precisely. And as you become more adept, you can increasingly lean on your internal cues. You'll start noticing the subtle physical sensations that precede an urge to react, a tightening in your chest, a quickening breath. Learning to recognize these early warning signs allows you to initiate the pause even before the impulse becomes overwhelming. This is about developing a sophisticated internal radar.
So, the more we practice, the more attuned we become to ourselves, and the pause becomes almost instinctual.
That's the default mode we're aiming for. It's not about suppressing emotions, but about creating a buffer between the emotion and your action. It's about ensuring your wise, thoughtful self is in the driver's seat, not the easily triggered part of your brain. Think of it as creating a small, quiet room in your mind where you can go to collect yourself before deciding on a course of action.
And building this habit takes time and consistent effort, doesn't it? There aren't any shortcuts to making it truly stick.
You're absolutely right, Lisa. It's a marathon, not a sprint. The key is to celebrate the small victories along the way. Acknowledge every time you successfully inserted that pause, no matter how brief or how insignificant it might seem. Each successful pause is a vote cast for your desired behavior, and these votes add up, gradually reshaping your automatic responses.
So, it's about persistent, compassionate practice, using accountability, self-reflection, and creating supportive environments.
That summarizes it beautifully. We're not just learning a technique, we're cultivating a new way of being. We're transforming our automatic pilot. Remember how we discussed the brain's ability to change? This is that in action. By consistently practicing the pause, we are literally rewiring our brains to favor calm, considered responses over impulsive reactions. We're building new, stronger pathways.
It's empowering to know that we can actively change our ingrained patterns.
It truly is. And as you reinforce this habit, you'll start to notice broader benefits. Your relationships will improve as people perceive you as more predictable and less reactive. Your decision-making will become sharper, as you're less likely to make choices fueled by temporary emotional states. Your overall sense of well-being will increase, as you experience less regret from impulsive actions.
It sounds like making the pause a default mode has a ripple effect across all areas of life.
It absolutely does. The consistent application of the pause, even in mundane situations, builds a strong foundation of emotional regulation. It's like regularly clearing out your mental inbox. You have more space for clarity, creativity, and genuine connection. And it's crucial to remember that this isn't a one-time fix. It's an ongoing commitment to self-awareness and intentional living.
So, for our listeners who are diligently working on this, the message is to keep going, be patient, and trust the process.
Exactly. Keep practicing, celebrate your progress, and extend yourself that same kindness and understanding you would offer a friend learning a new skill. You are building a powerful tool for a more peaceful and effective life. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Think Before You React, Mastering the Pause. This is our 16th and final episode.
That's right, Alex. We've come to the end of our journey, exploring how to transform our impulsive reactions into thoughtful responses. It's been quite a ride, hasn't it?
It truly has, Lisa. Over the past 15 episodes, we've laid the groundwork, introduced tools, and practiced techniques to help us find that crucial space between an impulse and our actions. Today, we'll be bringing it all together, reflecting on the entire series, and looking at what it means to truly master the pause for a lifetime of calm and considered action.
So, Alex, to kick us off, Can you remind our listeners of the core problem we set out to solve in episode 1? What was the unseen gap we discovered?
Absolutely. In episode 1, we introduced the concept of the unseen gap, that tiny, yet incredibly significant moment between a stimulus and our response. We learned that this gap is where our power lies. Most of us operate on autopilot, reacting instantly out of habit or emotion. But by becoming aware of this gap, we open the door to choice. It's the space where we can shift from being controlled by our impulses to being in control of our reactions.
And that autopilot is often driven by our brain's alarm system, right? We talked about the amygdala hijack in episode 2.
Precisely. The amygdala, our brain's ancient threat detector, can go into overdrive, triggering that fight or flight response. This is the amygdala hijack. When it happens, our rational thinking, located in the prefrontal cortex, gets temporarily sidelined. We become reactive, driven by primal emotions rather than reasoned thought. Understanding this biological basis is key to recognizing why we sometimes say or do things we later regret.
And that leads us to our first practical tool, the 7-second rule from episode 3. It sounds so simple, but the impact is huge.
It is remarkably effective. The 7-second rule involves consciously counting to 7, or even just taking a deep breath between feeling an impulse and acting on it. This brief pause gives our prefrontal cortex time to re-engage, to catch up with the amygdala's alarm. It interrupts the automatic reaction and allows for a more considered response. Think of it as a very, very short mental holding pattern.
Then in episode 4, we delved into de-escalation self-talk. How does that work hand in hand with the pause?
De-escalation self-talk is about having a calm, rational conversation with yourself during that pause. Instead of letting negative thoughts spiral, you consciously inject phrases like, "This isn't a real emergency. I can handle this calmly," or "What's the best way forward?" It's like having a wise inner coach stepping in to calm the nervous system and guide your thoughts.
And that inner coach is your prefrontal cortex waking up, as we discussed in episode 5, the architect of thoughtful responses.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex is crucial for executive functions like planning, decision-making, and impulse control. Practices like the 7-second rule and de-escalation self-talk are essentially training exercises designed to strengthen and encourage its engagement when needed most. We want to build the habit of letting our rational mind lead, not just our emotional reactions.
Beyond managing our own internal states, we also learned how to better understand others through mindful listening in episode 6. How does that tie into the pause?
Mindful listening is about being fully present when someone else is speaking. Instead of formulating your counterargument while they're still talking, you genuinely listen to understand their perspective. This skill cultivates empathy and reduces misunderstandings, which can often be the spark for our own reactive impulses. By truly hearing others, we create a more positive interaction space, requiring less reactive deflection.
And when we do need to communicate our needs or boundaries, episode 7 introduced us to assertive, not aggressive, communication.
Assertiveness is about clearly and respectfully expressing your thoughts, feelings, and needs without infringing on the rights of others. It's about using I statements, speaking calmly and directly, and maintaining eye contact. Aggression, on the other hand, is about dominance and can escalate conflict. The pause is essential here, allowing us to choose words that are assertive rather than aggressive. It's about effective communication, not winning an argument.
A significant part of mastering ourselves is recognizing what sets us off. That's where episode 8, identifying your triggers, comes in. How does that knowledge empower us?
Knowing your triggers, those specific people, situations, or words that tend to provoke a strong emotional response, is like having a map of your potential landmines. Once you identify them, you can anticipate them. This awareness allows you to proactively prepare, perhaps by employing the 7-second rule or de-escalation self-talk before you feel overwhelmed. It's moving from being surprised by your reactions to being prepared for them.
Now, what happens when those triggers are unavoidable? Episode 9 focused on navigating high-stakes conversations. What's the key takeaway there?
In high-stakes conversations, the pressure is on, and our amygdala is likely to be on high alert. The key is to intentionally bring the pause into these situations. This means preparing beforehand, if possible, by setting an intention to stay calm and listen. During the conversation, when you feel your emotions rising, actively employ the 7-second rule. Take a sip of water or silently repeat a calming phrase. The goal is to maintain emotional regulation throughout, ensuring your responses are strategic rather than purely emotional.
Sometimes, even with our best efforts, we might feel unfairly attacked. Episode 10 offered us the art of deflection.
Deflection, when used skillfully, isn't about avoidance or aggression. It's about redirecting unproductive energy. It can involve humor, asking clarifying questions to buy time, or gently steering the conversation back to a more constructive path. It requires the pause to be implemented effectively, so you can choose a deflection that de-escalates rather than escalates. It's about managing the conversational flow without getting derailed by accusations or criticism.
And what if we do slip up? Episode 11, building emotional resilience, is so important for that.
Emotional resilience is our ability to bounce back from adversity, setbacks, and strong emotions. It's acknowledging that we aren't perfect, and we will sometimes react impulsively. The pause helps us here too, not just in the moment of reaction, but in the aftermath. Instead of dwelling on guilt, we can pause, reflect on what happened, learn from it, and then move forward with renewed commitment. Resilience is about persistence, not perfection.
That brings us to episode 12, group dynamics and the pause. Leading by example. How can one person's pause influence a group?
When you consistently model calm, considered responses, especially in a tense group setting, you create a ripple effect. Your calm can be contagious, encouraging others to pause and regulate their own emotions. Instead of a situation escalating into a chaotic free-for-all, your leadership through the pause can help maintain a more productive and respectful environment. You become an anchor of stability.
It's a journey, and sometimes a tough one. Episode 13's focus on self-compassion on the journey is vital for staying motivated.
Absolutely. Self-compassion is about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a struggling friend. When you inevitably have a moment where you react impulsively, instead of harsh self-criticism, offer yourself grace. Acknowledge that you're human, you're learning, and a single lapse doesn't erase all your progress. This self-compassion makes it much easier to get back on track and continue practicing the pause.
And progress is about intentionality. In episode 14, we talked about cultivating intention. What does that mean in the context of the pause?
Cultivating intention means consciously choosing what kind of person you want to be and how you want to show up in the world before situations arise. It's shifting from reacting to life to actively participating in it with purpose. When you have a clear intention like, I intend to be a calm communicator, that intention becomes a guiding principle. The pause then becomes the tool that helps you align your actions with that chosen intention, rather than letting your impulses dictate your path.
And finally, in episode 15, we focused on reinforcing the habit, making the pause your default mode. What are some key strategies for making it stick?
This is about moving the pause from a conscious effort to an automatic response. It involves consistent practice, even in low-stakes situations. It means celebrating small victories. Every time you successfully pause and respond thoughtfully is a win. It also involves creating cues, maybe a sticky note on your computer or a mental reminder when you enter a certain environment. The more you practice, the more ingrained it becomes, until responding thoughtfully feels natural.
So, Alex, as we wrap up this entire series, what does the mastered pause truly mean for our listeners? It's not about suppression, is it?
No, not at all. The mastered pause is not about suppressing emotions, shutting down your feelings, or becoming a robot. It's about empowerment. It's about consciously choosing your responses, aligning them with your values and intentions, and thereby living a more fulfilling and harmonious life. It's the ability to engage with the world from a place of calm awareness, rather than being tossed about by the winds of impulse and immediate reaction. It means understanding that your responses are a reflection of your inner state and having the tools to shape that inner state.
It's about transforming those moments of potential conflict or regret into opportunities for connection and growth. It's about making conscious choices that serve your long-term well-being and your relationships.
Exactly. And this mastery isn't a destination you reach and then stop. It's a continuous practice. Life will always present challenges, new situations, and old habits can resurface. The techniques we've discussed, the 7-second rule, de-escalation self-talk, mindful listening, engaging the prefrontal cortex, these are your lifelong companions. They are the tools you can always return to.
So, for all our listeners who have been with us from episode 1 to today, congratulations on committing to this journey. The dedication you've shown to understanding yourselves and improving your responses is truly commendable.
Indeed, remember the unseen gap. Remember your prefrontal cortex. Remember the power of a simple breath, a 7-second count, or a kind word to yourself. These aren't just techniques. They are pathways to a more peaceful, purposeful, and empowered life. You have the capacity for thoughtful action. You have the ability to choose your path.
And the wisdom you've gained from this series isn't just for moments of high stress. It's about cultivating a general sense of calm and intentionality in your everyday interactions, turning the mundane into opportunities for positive engagement.
This has been an incredible series, and it's been a privilege to explore these concepts with you, Lisa, and with all our listeners. We hope that Think Before You React, Mastering the Pause, has provided you with valuable insights and practical tools that you'll carry with you long after this episode.
Thank you for joining us throughout this journey.
Thanks for listening to the series.